It's 10 years since I started Radiopaedia, or coming up to that. Just to put it in a nutshell, what is the mission? Well, we want to create the best radiology reference available, to make it available for free, forever, and for everyone. And why do we think this is important? Well, because really, if you're living in a developing country, or in a rural hospital, or in a small department somewhere, the ability to access information shouldn't be determined by how wealthy you or your institution or your country are. And I think we can all benefit from people having access to better information. However, that's sort of a just so story. That's not actually how it all started. That's how it feels like it is now. It'd be great to think that that's how I woke up in December 2005 thinking, but really it grew out of being a registrar, studying for my exams, wanting to collect cases and getting frustrated because putting them on my shelf, didn't have an office as a registrar, but putting it on a shelf or in my hard drive just weren't really very convenient places. I could never have the cases where I wanted, I couldn't find them, I couldn't search them. And I also became aware that all the tutorials I was getting from my consultants at Royal Melbourne, showing me these amazing cases. These cases would literally have dust on them. They'd be blown off in the morning of the tute. They'd be shown briefly. You wouldn't be able to see it from the back of the room. And at the end of the tute, it would vanish and go back into their office. And it occurred to me that maybe if you could just collect some of these cases and put them in one place, not everyone would have to have a full collection, and we'd have an awesome resource. So, because I am obsessive, as everyone who works with me knows, I am borderline DSM criteria, obsessive compulsive. I know that it started at 8:35 p.m. on December 1st, 2005. And I know this because another bad habit that I have is to write myself emails. And so I wrote to myself saying, this is an idea. And that was what I wrote, which is pretty close to what we have now. And the first thing you need when you want to start yourself a website is somewhere, this was back in 2005, so easy. Hosting wasn't really available. You had to build yourself a server. Fortunately, I had enough spare parts around the house to build one, which probably tells you more about me than you need to know. And I put together this contraption here and loaded up a couple of pieces of software. It ran on Linux at the time and used MediaWiki, which is the content management system that Wikipedia uses, and that's open source. Had to learn a bit of Linux to do that, put it together, plugged it through my router at home and just had access to it myself. And then before anything else, you have to have a logo. So I spent days working on these hideous logos and called it Wiki Radiologist, and then thought that didn't look very good, so I did that, but couldn't even get the plurals right down the bottom. But rapid iteration is key to web development. So within about 2 weeks, we had the start of what the logo that most of you are familiar with now, which was then updated in 2009 by someone who knew what they were doing, namely not me. And so what did the website look like in 2005, 6 and going into 7? It really didn't change. It was the native MediaWiki. It would have had only slightly more content than this. I don't have a screenshot of the very first version. But after a while, we can see that I'd made some, what at the time I thought were improvements in the look of it. It's all pretty dated. We had articles 114, and they were all written by me. And I was getting it onto my, what was that PDA called? Palm Pilot, managing to get it onto there, and had all sorts of things that I was doing. And then gradually found someone who had a free beta for the CMS, so used that, made it look a little bit better. Still not much content there, but it was really hard to edit this stuff. It wasn't just what we call WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get editing, which you're used to. If you wanted to make it bold, you had to put all this markup around it, and basically no one except me would be willing to do that, and even I was struggling. So then we decided that if it was going to go forward, we really needed to build our own site. And fortunately, we got some sponsorship from Toshiba, which seemed like an enormous amount at the time, but actually it's pretty small amount now, to spec out and decide how we would build a site that was built for what we needed to do. We knew that we had to build something that had the ability to create a case that had multiple studies, and that each study could have multiple images in it, and each image might be a stack that you wanted to scroll. because no one was doing that at the time. No one really is still doing that. And we wanted to have that relationship between articles and cases. But we didn't have that much money, and so I did the design myself. And then in 2009, having got that hideous one up and running, we then had it reskinned with a more professional design, and that's basically what you see today. The back end keeps changing and keeps evolving, and we keep tweaking the design as new browsers come out and phones, etc., that have different requirements. And from the very start, because, as I mentioned, I'm obsessive compulsive, I put on what's called Google Analytics, which is a free software by Google whereby they can track how many visitors you have. The first 12 months, say this is in individual page views. So a page view is just when you load a page. If you then click a link, that's another page view. Got up to when some social media site or something picked up, we got up to a spike here. But most of this is just me. So it's not that impressive. I mean, it's impressive at some levels. Maybe. But if we look at it in terms of page views per month, which flattens out some of these spikes, you can see there's a really nice trend. And already by the end of 2007, we were up to 25,000 page views a month. And I felt chuffed. I was showing anyone who would listen this graph and trying to convince them that there was an exponential curve in there somewhere. So the last time I spoke about Radiopaedia to this forum was in 2011. And so that's the bit over here is what I just showed you. And this is what I showed you in 2011. That's exponential. You won't believe me. It still looks kind of flat. But by that stage, we were up to 600,000 page views a month. Do you believe me now? We're now up to 8 million, and we're looking like we're going to get to 10 million page views a calendar month in mid-year, another few months. We've been growing at about 5 to 10% per month since 2007. March, that many pages to over an individual people from every single country on earth. And what did these serve them? Well, from my 114 articles at the end of 2007, we now have over 18,000 cases, almost 8,000 articles. And we have over 40,000 registered users, many thousands of which have contributed cases or articles, and many of them who are active every day on the site. Some have amassed thousands, tens of thousands of edits, as some people in the audience here. The other part that's really grown, and a special thanks has to go out to Andrew Dixon, who's tweeting currently about this, is our social media reach. And it's been a great way of content out there to a bigger audience in a different format than just being a reference site. And the numbers here are steadily growing as well. So you can scroll down, we have a number of outlets and they've got different sort of flavours. But that's over 1 million people that are fans. And you think, well, that's just people liking it and never looking at it. But we know that we have a case every day. In fact, we have a case every 19 hours. And the reason we pick 19 hours is that it's a prime number. So as you go 19, 19, 90, you hit every hour after a while so that you don't favour one particular area of the world. The usual case that we show every 19 hours will be seen by somewhere around the 200,000 mark. And it'll be retweeted and liked by thousands of people. And that generates about 10,000 visits back to the site. So this is people engaged enough that they actually click on the image to go and find the answer and read more about it. Sometimes we have special cases that hit a particular nerve. Now, April 1st, we have a tradition of doing an April Fool's. It usually catches many people. Cordis interna, which is the heart, was entirely in the abdominal cavity. But plain films are a little bit easy to sort of Photoshop these days. So a very talented guy from California also did a CT stack with the heart under the diaphragm. And even because we wanted to show that there was historical precedence, photoshopped a Da Vinci diagram. And we put that out, and that was fairly successful. The question that I get quite a lot, and I'm still baffled by people who should know better, who say, oh, so are you doing these features on your own? And did you write all of this? And the truth is that in 2005, when I first started, and 2007, when the site sort of launched, it was just me and my hacked together server. But now we have a whole group of managing editors, 4 of them. All over the world we have editors. Each section It has one or more editors who look after it and review every post, any edit, to moderate it and make sure that it's as accurate as it can be. And we have about 40,000 registered users. And my one salvaged part computer is now 5 enterprise-grade app servers hosted in the United States. We also have another 5 that do our staging servers are the ones we run our development work on for new features. We have one that load balances. I don't know what that does, but apparently something important. And a database for the actual information on it. But that's not the storage, that's just the servers. We have about 750 gigabytes. And it's on Amazon S3, which means when you want to download a case that might have 400 images, if you're in Australia or in South Africa, downloading it from the United States is going to be slow. So Amazon S3 gives you the option of replicating your data in every major continent, sometimes more so, so that when you query our page, you might be getting the page structure from the United States, but then the images come from the closest storage that you have to try and minimize time. And that equates to about 5 terabytes a month that we serve. And people are uploading about 3 gigabytes of images every day. So we're growing fairly rapidly. And all of this, of course, takes programmers. We now employ the equivalent of about 6 programmers at any one time, both to maintain the site, clean up bugs, troubleshoot changes, whenever a new browser version comes out that needs to be updated, but also work on new features. And that requires some admin people, it requires a designer, it requires all sorts of back support. So where do we go from now? Well, some of the options are pretty obvious. We have to continue to improve the content. Many of you are using it, if not daily, but weekly, for important things, like actually what you're going to write in your report. We have to make sure that the content is as accurate and as well referenced as possible. And we need to continue to add functionality to our existing core components. So we want to be able to annotate images in line. We want to be able to create better links between data sets. And we want to create new features. So we're working on the ability to write multiple choice questions that are linked to articles and cases so that they can be used for self-learning and self-testing. This really comes down to the fact that we're trying to create an infrastructure that allows all of us to teach all of each other and all of our future colleagues radiology in the easiest way without the boundaries imposed upon us by geography or institutions. So before I go on to the next bit of what I'm going to talk to you about, this was sort of, an epiphany is too strong a word, but I think it encapsulates some of the challenges and some of the ways that we at Radiopaedia see the world of teaching. I went to the United States for a neuro course at a university that will remain nameless. Traveled 20 hours to get there, paid $1,200 for the subscription. And they've got some nice cases. And then I see one, which was a reversible vasoconstriction syndrome. I think, I've seen that one before. I think that's one of mine. So I quickly get my laptop out and I go to it, and sure enough, it is mine. Not credited, just the image there. And I'm kind of chuffed. I think, great, this guy's using Radiopaedia. My case is up there. That's fine. But now I'm sort of tuned in. And over the course of the next couple of lectures, I pick up like 15 cases that I recognise as being my own. I don't know about the ones I didn't recognise. And I was able to quickly go and check. None of them credited to either myself or Radiopaedia. Did they think this was weird? I went up to them at the end and started chatting to them. And they were like, oh, that's great. It's a great resource. I'm like, yeah, clearly. And I said, oh, have you considered, uploading to the site? Oh, yeah, but what's stopping someone just using your stuff? Initial reaction was the feeling that somehow I'd been violated. I thought, how can we stop people doing this? This is terrible. They're thieving. And then I realised that I hadn't lost anything out of this. And so what we thought was, why not just make it easier for people to use it? So we added this button up here. If you click on it, any case, you get this, and it says, if you want to use this for non-commercial products, go for it. Say where you put it from, and if it's an on-page, online resource, link back to us. And it's under a Creative Commons license, which says you don't have to ask permission if you want to use it to educate people, or for non-commercial, whatever non-commercial purposes, provided you just say where it's from, and provided you don't copyright it. that happened as a result of that in part was the realisation that there were a lot of these organisations making a whole heap of money by basically restricting access to information. Created, Andrew Dixon, myself and a colleague from Edinburgh in the UK, Radiopaedia Events, which is a spin-off of really Radiopaedia. And the aim of it is to do what lots of people are doing, which is do these review courses. We've all seen and we all know who does them, and some are better than others. And so there's nothing really dramatic, except unlike just PowerPoints, we present the whole case in a scrollable fashion. We record the whole event in high definition. And we make it available for free for anyone who's in 116 out of, I think it's 196 countries. We also use all our cases and we give them away, both before and after the talk, because I think if what you're doing as a presenter is hoarding your cases and your answers, and that's what you bring to a presentation, then you're not actually valuating very much. If you're so worried about your presentation skills that giving away your slides before your talk means you're petrified that no one will show up, and no one does, maybe that's a win-win. People are reading your presentation at home. So we really want to try and value add in the way that we present and teach the cases, and allow people to go back and look at the cases after the event, the whole case, and be able to sort it out. I do all my teaching of registrars like this. We'll do a tutorial and then I'll send them the link to all the cases so they can go over them again at the end. I think this sort of encapsulates what we're thinking about, and that is sometimes you just have to try and do something a little bit differently if you want to change things, not just do what everyone else is doing. Thank you so much.